For the third year and counting, Richard Skipper has been celebrating the artists you love.
And what are some of the things that you've really
run out of time, and we've got to talk about your latest. I want to go back a little bit, first of all, and celebrate a true legend.
Richard Skipper is all about celebrating life, art, and his guest body of work.
And did you pursue performing opportunities while you were in high school?
Please join us while he showcases these diverse and talented individuals. Here's Richard Skipper.
Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating today? It's National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day. That's something worth celebrating. But more importantly, we have the incredible Michael Misita on the show tonight, and I am so thrilled that he's here. Michael, for some reason, I'm getting an echo. So
you are.
Yes, I'm getting an echo coming back at me. So try to fix that before we start. Let's see. Click on your audio and make sure that your echo cancellation is checked.
I have a friend here doing this.
Okay, good. It's always nice to have a friend here doing that. First of all, how are you, Michael?
Echo cancellation. Yes. I'm good. I'm wonderful. Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, I am.
I like your shirt.
Thank you, and I love yours. We are getting a little feedback there, so just as we start off on the wrong foot tonight, we are getting a little static and feedback. So if you can just start talking, we'll see if that.
Is it only when I speak, or
no? It's gone now. So
it's gone. Okay, great.
So thank you, friend.
Thank you, Greg.
That may be.
Greg's my neighbor, and he knows. I don't know anything about computers, and I just bought a brand new one the other day, and so he's been setting the whole thing up.
I always begin my shows by asking my guests, who or what are you celebrating today? And I think it's appropriate that you say we celebrate our neighbors.
Oh, I definitely celebrate my neighbors, and I celebrate my friends. I love my friends, and everybody that I'm friends with on Facebook. I mean, I learn so much from everybody. So and I'm happy to hear their stories and how they're doing and their families doing, how the kids are doing and everything. I think it's important. I love it. And I mainly celebrate life.
I appreciate that. And I have to tell you, Michael, so many people have said to me over and over and over again, when are you going to have Michael on the show? You have quite a fan base out there. And I mean, already the numbers are very high here tonight. So you've done something right. I will say that.
I was actually surprised because I thought he wants me to be on his show. And then I saw all the people you had on your show. And I said, why on earth would he want me on there? Honestly, I'm glad to be here.
You're right up there with everybody else, and I am thrilled that you're here. So I will ask you, who or what are you celebrating? You've mentioned the people in your life. Is there any special event that's coming up or that you've just done that you want to celebrate as well?
No, I'm one of those people that my one and only thing is I'm appreciative. I appreciate every day. I'm on the ocean, on a cliff, and I go out there every morning, and I'm just thank you for another day. Especially at my age, I'm glad I have another day. And my life, I have a terrific life. I really do. I had a terrific life when I was in show business, and I have a wonderful life now here in Hawaii. There's nothing else on earth I need. I'm very content.
That's wonderful. I start out with a surprise question. I haven't even looked at this question, so this will take us down whatever path it's going to take us down. And the question is, would you rather hear good news or bad news first?
I'd like to hear good news first. Yeah, and then you can tell me the bad news.
Well, there is no bad news tonight, except for the technical glitches, which we've gotten already out of the way. And then the other question is, explore a path to mentoring, particularly in a space or subject where you have a special skill. And obviously, you have had this phenomenal career. Who are the mentors who have paved the way for you? And then I want to ask if you also have served as a mentor in this business?
There's a lot of them, but my first mentor was my mom and dad, I'd have to say. But my biggest mentor was my original dancing teacher back in Lorain, Ohio, Judy Murray. She really mentored me all through high school. And then when I was doing shows, a lot of well-known people, whatever, helped me in every way possible. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful to people. And even now, friends, like my friend Greg here, I wouldn't be on here if it wasn't for him. So I think everybody mentors me in a sense, and I say that on Facebook a lot, and I don't know how people take it, but I really mean it. I'm not just saying it to sound a certain way or something. So and when I was in different shows, I know Tommy Toon, when I did Summer Stock, he didn't mentor me exactly. He did to me, but he really kind of took me in hand when we were doing shows. I did 8 shows with Tommy, and I only saw him.
Very good friend. So I think the world of him.
He's one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. Another one is Harvey Evans. I was looking at your show on Harvey Evans, and what a sweetheart. This is one of those people, there's nothing you could possibly say bad about them. They were just wonderful, wonderful people. And luckily I hooked up with him when I got on Facebook again, and we talked for a while, and then I didn't see him, but he was great.
There's a great book that I have been reading, and I've talked about it on previous shows, called The Right Words at the Right Time. It's a book by Marlo Thomas, and it's really essays from celebrities, people in the arts, political figures, the world of sports, and they all have done these short essays on hearing the right words at the right time in their careers. And I want to ask you if there was a particular time in your life or career where you heard the exact right words at the right time that really set you on the path that you, of course, had this successful career in the business, but hearing the right words at the right time.
Certainly my parents. My parents supported me always. If this is what I wanted to do, they were all for it, and they supported me a great deal. And when I went to New York and started working in shows, I could make a list of people who have supported me in this business. And I talk about at one point, when I first went to New York, the day I went to New York, I got my first Broadway show. But I wrote recently that the reason for that was not just an overnight success that all of a sudden I landed there and got on Broadway, but what went on before it, and the people who called the choreographer and recommended me to do this show. And as far as I was concerned, I was dancing down the streets. It was such a thrill. I've been trying to get that across to people when I write, because I'm sort of reminiscing an awful lot about what I did in my life and what it's like to be in a Broadway show. And I get so many wonderful comments. I mean, I can barely keep up with them, but it's kind of fun because so many people I know have been through that. And some of the people that have been on your show as well, we keep in touch, but they all encourage me. Everybody encourages me. I think the best thing I ever heard from anyone, I've heard this several times, was, "You can do it." Times when I thought, "Oh, I don't know if and they say, "You can do it," and I just kept telling myself that all along, not just with showbiz, but really in life in general.
Michael, I'm so glad to hear you say that. In a business where we deal with a lot of rejection, and people hear a lot of times, "You're not going to be able to do this. It's not going to happen. Just give it up and get a day job, have something to fall back on." All these things. To hear you say that, is very encouraging. And I know that you grew up in Ohio. I'll start. You and my father share a birthday. So January 10th. And then you and your sister started out dancing together. Am I correct?
Yes.
And I asked for a photograph of you as I think 5 years old. I love this picture. And I love the caption that you put with it, "Biting my lip." So I
Didn't
asked
fire
for,
at that age yet.
I asked for a photograph at this age because to me, and I know I sound like a broken record, everyone, but it's a very special time in a kid's life before life begins to tell you who you can or cannot be. It sounds to me like you were getting a lot of yeses instead of nos, which is very encouraging. So tell us a little bit about this little boy. And do you recall this photograph at all?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have a few of them somewhere on Facebook in my computer, but I don't see them very often. But yeah, I quickly got one to send to you in time to do this. But I think he's precocious, but he was a good little boy. And actually, that's something that through the years I had to kind of get over, because I was so used to always being a good little boy. And, I'm glad I grew up that way. But, my mother dressed us wonderfully all the time. She wanted to make sure her kids were seen as being little ladies and gentlemen. I grew up a gentleman. I even noticed that when I go to the store or something, that an old lady's is going through the door and people push in front of her. And, I always step aside. I can't begin to tell you how grateful they are, because I think because they've been seen. And as we grow older, I've noticed that you become less and less seen sometimes, because whereas, being in Broadway and everything like that, you were seen a lot. But it's funny how that changes over the years. Not a bad thing, but it's interesting. So I always try to help little old ladies, little old gentlemen, young or old or whatever, and they'll say thank you. And I go, I was brought up to be a gentleman. And
I will say one thing. I don't care where, what your background is. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I believe that the one common thread that every person on this planet has is that we all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be seen. And that's the bottom line with everything. And I think that if we take the time to see everybody, it will truly make a difference in our lives.
I think so too. And I think in the world in general, that's often a problem, to not feel seen or cared for. Clerks in stores, everybody to me is they have a job or they're trying to work, and who knows what they're going through. I don't assume that they're okay, or I don't acknowledge them if I'm in a store or whatever. I talk to people and thank them and let them know, thank you for doing that for me. And they sometimes look at me because they're so used to being sort of an automaton sometimes. Nobody's paying any attention to them. And I think it's important. I think being seen on whatever level is really, really important. I think it's the basis of an awful lot of problems in the world.
Absolutely. Well, how did the dancing start with you and your sister? Did it start in school? Did it start in Masonic halls? Where did the dancing start?
Well, when I was younger, not quite that young, but when I was younger, I went to a dance class with my sister, and this is literally out of a chorus
line.
Yeah, and because at one point I was supposed to play Mike in a chorus line, and the whole idea was I can do that. And I remember sitting as a little kid watching my sister and her friends dancing, and so I started to take dancing lessons. My parents encouraged me, but the problem was that the teacher, Miss Brooker, was very harsh. And she had a stick she'd carry around, and she kept smacking me on the back of the legs with this stick. And I told my parents, I don't want to take dancing classes anymore. And I got out of that. So, but later on, when I was about, I think 12 years old, my mother her club or some group in our hometown was doing a show called Follies. And it was at the Palace Theater on Broadway in Lorain, Ohio. And at first, when she told my parents when she told us, my sister and I want you to be in it because the other ladies' kids are going to be in it. My sister cried. She didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to go and do it. I got there and I was there for 5 minutes. That was it. The rest of my life from then on was show business. I started taking dance classes all the time in Lorain, all through high school and everything. And my sister and I performed all over the place in Cleveland and on television and all these things. But the thing was that when I would go to go to school, I dreaded having my picture in the paper. And my picture was in the paper with her dancing in some costume almost every week. But you know, all those years, not one person, not the football player or anything like that, ever made fun of me. I'd walk with my head down because I thought my picture's been in the paper, darn it, you know. And people would say, and the football players and that would go, "Hey, Mike, great. Saw your picture in the paper," you know. And it's funny. I still felt that way the whole time through high school. I didn't want to be noticed too much. And but I never had a problem with it like a lot of kids have had, especially boys. Because when I was dancing, not a lot of guys really danced.
Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned both Follies and the Palace Theater in Ohio, and both the Follies and the Palace Theater would be in your future later on.
Yeah, that hasn't been lost on me, believe me. And I'm here in Hawaii now, and I worked for 5 years at the Palace Theater here, putting on shows. So I thought, well, you know, and in Applause, the show Applause was at the Palace Theater in New York, and I consider that my first really big hit show that I was in. And it was perfect from beginning to end. It was everything that a kid from Ohio hoped being on Broadway would be, except at the theater. I was kind of shocked when I went to New York at how small the theaters were. I know they have bigger ones now, but I went in the
you and another boy from Ohio were in that show together.
Who?
Leroy Reams.
Oh, Leroy. Yeah, I love Leroy. He's one of the best performers, dancers I've ever seen. He's wonderful. We just touched base on a Zoom group with the Applause cast, some of the members of the cast, and I haven't seen him in years, but we chatted and it was fun.
A lot of fun. But so you're dancing, you know, in these opportunities, you know, locally, and then you make this decision that you want to pursue this as a career, and obviously your parents are encouraging for this to happen. So right after you finish high school, how did I know that you did a lot of work at Melody Top, and Melody Top in Milwaukee. For those, I know a lot about Melody Top, but for those who don't know, if you can, well, Dan Pagel, you know, God bless him, keeping that legacy alive. If you can talk a little bit about what Melody Top was for you in your life, just starting out, and that world of summer stock and show business doesn't exist anymore.
You know, I was asking that today on a comment. Someone said, "Oh, I only did summer stock," and I said, "Only?" I said, "I one of my best times was in summer stock."
Oh, mine too.
I love summer stock. And Milwaukee Melody was wonderful. I was at Boston Conservatory of Music, and I was there for 3 years. And 2 of those summers, I went to New York, I guess, and auditioned and got in the shows with Tommy Tune and Kurt Peterson, and gosh, a lot of people I worked with later. And it was some of the best times of my life, especially that first season of Melody Top. What a wonderful, wonderful place that is. I met so many people, and we worked with so many stars, Chita and Gretchen Wyler, who I have adored.
Oh, my God, I loved her.
Yeah, and Tommy, of course, Tommy Tune, and Jane from the old pictures.
Jane Powell, yes.
Yeah. And it was absolutely fantastic. And in fact, it was after I did the second season there, I went back to school for 1 more year. I had a scholarship all through college, and but they were going to pay me to stay in college for another year, because back then, you know, there weren't a whole lot of boy dancers. I think there were about 13 guys and 150 girls or something in the school. So, and when I went for my first audition in New York for Fig Leaves Are Falling, kind of a flop, I couldn't believe how many guys were there auditioning to dance. There had to be 500. And it was funny because I looked and I thought, oh my God, how will I ever get in the show with all these guys? But you know, 75% of them couldn't dance at all. I think they were just coming from the street. I don't even know if they do that anymore.
No, it's very different now.
Is it? Yeah, because back then I was like sweating a little bit because I thought, oh my God, it's a lot of competition. Maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. But there were about 25 many of whom I worked with throughout the years, who not only got the job, but that was recommended by people. And I think Tommy was one of the people who recommended me to the choreographer.
I mean, I am very, very fortunate to call Tommy friend, but I want to ask you, you worked with him, what he brought to the table for you, both as an artist and as a friend, what you learned working from him. You did many productions with him that you've carried throughout your career.
I always held Tommy in my heart because I feel like he was the person. I remember once we talked late into the night and he was telling me about, I think he mentioned Promises at the time. And he said, boy, you could be in that show or something. And I got real excited. And then the next day he said, he said, but you should stay in college, finish college and whatnot. But Tommy was so wonderful and such a wonderful sense of humor and quality and everything. And I think the biggest thing was he was so damn tall. And to me, I was the tall one all of the time. Everybody, I looked, down on everybody around me size-wise. And here Tommy, and I'm like, he was so tall. I was looking up. I think I saw him a couple times in New York when I first went there. But I can't speak highly enough of Tommy. He influenced me a great deal and showed me that, hey, I can do that. So he's in my heart always, even though I haven't seen him in a long time.
Well, I want to ask you, how did the move to New York happen for you? When you first came to New York, did you know anyone in New York? Did you have friends that you stayed with? How did that transition happen for you?
I just knew we were going to New York. I was going to New York, and Rupert, somebody, I stayed at his apartment. I don't think I even knew him that well, but I slept on the floor in this little tiny apartment with a bathtub in the main room.
Yeah.
And I was on a mattress that he put on the floor, and all I could think of was roaches crawling all over the place, and I was kind of spraying around the mattress so that it wouldn't happen. But I really don't quite recall. I sort of I was sort of there. I know the first Broadway show I ever saw was Sweet Charity with Gwen Burton. And of course, that just sent me. I was just like, oh my God, I can't stay in school any longer. I got to go do this, know?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first show that you ever saw?
Ever?
Ever.
Oh, you mean on the stage?
On the stage.
It was in Cleveland, and it was Bye Bye Birdie. And years later, actually, I played Birdie at the Hannah Theater in Cleveland, the part of Birdie. Mm-hmm. But when I saw that and all those people in those squares in the telephone hour or whatever that was, I was like, oh my God. I mean, I was just, and seeing the movie West Side Story, which blew me away. I never knew that someday I'd be working with those people. In fact, I didn't know that when I went to see Sweet Charity on my first Broadway show. And I remember Gwen came out back in a great big fur coat and was signing autographs and everything. And that later on I would work with her and know her and whatnot. I think life is so funny. There's so many things that have happened to me that if someone would have tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, Michael, do you know that you're going to be doing this and doing that someday with that person or something like that? I would have thought they were nuts. I wouldn't have believed them. I'm like, what? But that has happened to me over and over and over again.
It's interesting, that you say this because I feel the same way in terms of the people that I've got to know as friends in this business that I grew up with, thinking, I pinch myself sometimes saying, I cannot believe as a child watching some of these icons on television that they ended up becoming friends. And now as I channel surf, I see, Carol Cook and Carol Channing and other people that I've worked with. It's an amazing thing to have that happen. But I think it's a matter of just getting out there and, as Carol says, joining the human race. Once you're out there doing it, these things are bound to happen. Well,
the only time I ever met Carol Cook was I went to dinner with her. A friend of ours, I don't remember his name, but there were 3 star ladies like that at the dinner. I never laughed so much in my life as having dinner with Carol Cook. All of them were telling joke after joke, but they had them written down in their purses. And they go in, oh, what about this one? They tell it. And it got to be so that the entire restaurant was laughing at them, you know, and I remember the owner or manager or whatever came over to our table, and she looked at him like he was going to tell her to be quiet or something. And she gave him this great big smile, and he just laughed and walked away. Let her do whatever she wanted to do. So I was watching your video yesterday with her. You know, she is.
I have to tell everyone, what you really should have seen was the after show. Because Leroy and Carol and I were on for another hour and a half. And she was telling joke after, you're right, joke after joke after joke, and just absolutely hysterical. And I would get kicked off of Facebook if I was to tell. Just very, very funny. You've done so many incredible shows, MAME with Ann Miller and Applause. Was there a particular show that you did that was very difficult for you to let go of?
I loved doing Applause, and I think probably Pippin. It's funny. I loved all those shows. I was working with Ann Miller was absolutely wonderful. I went to Florida with her cast. I had no idea she was going to Broadway. I never even thought about it. You know, we were in Florida, I think, for 6 weeks performing, and she asked me, would I go into the Broadway company with her? And I was like, what? You're doing what? You know, and I found out later that it was sort of a tryout for her, I think, or practice to do the show for 6 weeks. You know, so that was thrilling, although I don't think a lot of the cast was too crazy about me coming in that way, you know, but I think I forgot what the question was.
There was a particular show that was difficult for you to let go of.
Oh, I love doing Pippin. Pippin, working with Fosse, and it was a very sexy show. I played the brother, Louis, and at first I thought, oh God, I'm going to have to take my shirt off at one point. But you had these like sleek white pants on and these tall boots and I don't know, thing around your arm and all that. And it just made you feel great. And I stood there waiting to go out because I've always had a thing about being skinny. It's affected me my entire life. And so whenever I was going to do a show, I always kind of asked, like, and what are the costumes? Because to do a show 8 times a week, you better like what you're wearing. Because if you don't, it's really uncomfortable. But that show, it was just absolutely wonderful to do. I went in for someone, but with the original cast, for Chris Chadman, who was a close friend of mine. He played the role, but he went away for holiday or whatever for 2 weeks. And then the following year, I did it again for 3 months. But I love that show. I think that was maybe my favorite show to perform in ever.
When was the last time that you were in New York, and did you see the last revival of Pippin, which had a completely different look and feel to it?
I didn't. I was just thinking of that today, that I haven't been back to New York in years. The only way I keep in touch with any shows that are going on is through Facebook. The great thing about Facebook, I went on because we did a show called La CAGE aux FOLLES here, which I choreographed. And the guy told me, he says, the only way you can see the pictures I took is to go on Facebook. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to join that just to see these pictures. He said, oh, you can go off of it if you don't want to be. Well, the rest is history. I love Facebook. You know, it's caused me to write a lot. So I'm really happy being on there. I've met all the people I worked with that are still alive from those years, producers and everything. I consider myself extremely fortunate that we did a Follies get together. I think it was last year, and Stephen Sondheim was on, and I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen any of those people in all these years. I was asked once. They said, "Oh, you know, so and so passed away." So I said, "I didn't know that." I said, "Well, you talk about being such a good friend of these people. How could you not have known that?" And I thought, it's different when you're in a show. I mean, you're like so close to your family, and you live your lives together every day for sometimes a year or more, and rehearsing together and all of that. You become great friends, but then you go to other shows and you go to other things and you don't not be friends with them anymore, but you just kind of don't see them. Everybody's busy, as I wrote about the other day, it is work. I mean, I've had people reprimand me for calling it a job. And I was like, it is a job. I said, I don't it's fun, and it's
Now, I have a
wonderful.
question. Are the people who are reprimanding you in the business or not?
They're not. I don't think I don't think they are, because I asked them once, I said, have you ever been in a show or a Broadway show and everything? They said no, but they said if they were, they would love every second of every day of every moment throughout the year or whatever. And I thought, well, that's admirable. But, sometimes you just don't feel like going to work. Maybe it's just me, but I've had days when I was like, oh God, got to drag myself to the theater. But
well, as you can see on the scroll on the bottom, our giveaway tonight is going to be based on the hashtag commitment. And you bring up a very interesting point. When you go into a show, Carol Channing, Ethel Merman used to say, you become a nun because you have no social life. You go to the theater, you do what you need to do, and you are with a group of people for a committed amount of time, and then you may work with some of those people again. And even if you do work with those people again, the circumstances are different because of the dynamics of whatever the show is. Sometimes it could be a flop show, it could be a hit. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew the show was not the success that you thought it was going to be, and you still have to forge through this, again, the commitment of doing it? And what gets you through having to go through something like that?
Well, the first show I did was Fig Leaves Are Falling. That was a flop, and it closed after 4 nights. And of course, at that time, I was so excited to be in a show, whether it flopped or not. It set me up and everything. But I've done my share of things that I wasn't crazy about doing or really didn't want to do. EQUUS was one of those. I never enjoyed doing EQUUS because here I am dancing around in all these Broadway shows and everything. And then my manager at the time said, oh, we wanted you to get some kind of credit in a play or whatever. And so I said, okay. And I went in, I think, for 6 months. And oh my God, you sit there and never move except for about 10 minutes out of the entire show. And you have to sit there and watch the actors on the stage every single night for 2 hours or whatever. And to me, I was like, I want to move. The good part about that, though, is I started with Tony Perkins, and then Richard Burton came in. So I was able to do the first couple of weeks with Richard Burton, and then I left. But it made it more exciting because he was in it. But up until that point, I've never been in a show where you had to sit on the stage the entire night watching it every single night. It's one thing to do it every night, do it 8 times a week. You know what I mean? I don't think people really realize the stamina required of a performer, and the difficulty of, I never stayed in a show more than I think 8 months in Follies was the longest time I actually stayed in a show. I was always on to the next thing. I thought I can't be doing this for 10 years. And, but I know people, a lot of friends that I had loved, they get in a show, it's a hit. They'll stay in it 5-6 years.
I know of actors that have been in Lion King for almost 20 years because it's a steady check in this business.
Wow, yeah. That's understandable. That just wasn't me. I almost after a show opened, I would start looking for another thing. I don't know. I was always kind of moving on to things, People thought I was crazy for a long time. And I told somebody once, they were complaining about not doing this and not doing that. And I said, you know what? I said, you cannot commit yourself to that which you do not love. If you don't love something, whether it be a person, whether it be a job, whether it be being in show business, whatever it is, if you don't love it, you won't make it through it. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I need that full, solid commitment to something. And that's just what I learned a long time ago, I guess. And I'm that way with personal relationships and everything. If you don't love something and then you complain that you don't have it, well, I think the first place you need to look is you don't love it enough. And I think, as in this business, you better love it because there's all the glitz and glamour and all the fabulous and stuff that like 80% of it or something is a hell of a lot of work, and work you love. I would do it again, but still, that commitment. If that commitment doesn't keep you going, it's never is worth it.
You mentioned earlier that it was your manager that decided that you should go into EQUUS, just to get that credit on your resume. In this business, getting an agent, getting a manager, for some people, it is that holy grail item for them. Mm-hmm. Was it important for you to have an agent and a manager in this business?
Not in New York. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
No, never. I never even considered it in New York. I somehow I had a manager, and I did that Dr. Pepper commercial, and he called me the next day to tell me that you won this award. And I'm like, huh? And he said, this Cleo Award. I never heard of it before. I was like, all I could think of was, you mean I won an award and I didn't get to go up there and thank the Academy for winning our one chance to do that? I had no idea what it was, but I think he was the only manager I had, or only agent I had for a little bit, but I never used an agent to go audition for a show. I mean, most of the time it was for the chorus, so I don't think you really needed one.
And when did you make the decision that you were going to leave the business?
I made it. You mean New York or Hollywood?
In New York. I mean, you left New York and you went out west, and then you went even further west.
You mean to Hawaii?
To Hawaii. I
know. I swore when I got to Hawaii I was never going to count to 8 again ever in my life, because going to the gym and lifting at 1, 2, and I said I'm not going to do this. But I don't know, when I go places, somebody knows somebody who says, "Oh, you do that? Would you do this?" And I do, and I'm really glad I did, because I've loved doing it. You talked earlier about giving back. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the last 20 shows I've done, they would offer to pay me. I refused to be paid. I said, no. I said, I'm giving this back to these young performers and everything, and I love doing it. And I said, I don't need you to be paid. The ulterior motive of that was, I don't want to be paid and people telling me what I can and cannot do. So I never accepted payment. But I was paid 100-fold just by watching them up on the stage. That was a wonderful way to finish the latter part of my life. I just retired, by the way. I've been trying to retire for years, but I turned 75, and I thought, that's it. It's the new one that got to come in.
I think you're dyslexic. 57, I'll take. 75, I don't think so. Well, you don't look 75. You look great. Whatever 75 looks like, but you look great. How did the move to Hawaii take place? Why Hawaii?
Well, we've moved a lot, my partner and I, and we're actually in our 19th home. He loves to build, and we're always buying houses, and not to sell them, mind you, but just for us. The worst part is going to visit someplace, and then we think, hey, what would we like to live here? But we did that here in Hawaii, and decided. We went away for a vacation, and then of course what we do almost all the time is go look at real estate. And so we've had like 4 homes here in Hawaii since we've only been here for like 10 years or something. But we enjoy it. It's like when the pandemic happened, we had just moved into the house we're in now. It's on a cliff overlooking the ocean, and we downscaled. We were in an enormous house and property, and we loved it. He said, we're getting older. And he said, maybe we should downscale a bit, because now this place looks beautiful, but as we get older, if we can't keep it up, it'll be harder to sell and whatnot. So at first I thought, are you crazy? Move again? I couldn't do it when I looked at all the stuff we had. But we looked around for a while, and we, of course, as we always do, I walked into this place and immediately said I could live here. Of course, the view is unbelievable. So it's a quarter of the size, really. But we've been working on that for the last 2.5 years, and we have about 2 more years to go to remodeling. And we do that. We do it all the time. We love doing that. So I've had that. And when they said in the pandemic, right after we moved in, nobody, you're not supposed to go anywhere and don't be around people and all that. We just looked at each other like, yeah, well, that's what we do all the time. We're usually home fixing things up. So. And doing those shows once a year, which was wonderful.
Well, you got to come back to New York. You got to come visit us out here. So I do want to point out again to everybody that we are going to do a giveaway. And my giveaway package tonight, I'm putting a little package together based on the shows that you've done. So that's going to be my little gift to ever who wins tonight. All you need to do is comment with a hashtag commitment. The best way to do this is through YouTube, because sometimes Facebook, it doesn't show up when we do our little drawing at the end. So I've got some wind down questions that I want to do just for the fun of it. And the first question is, what can you tell us about what you consider the most successful period of your career? Some people may look at your career and go, that was it, but it's what you feel inside here. So for you personally, what was that moment like for you?
Actually, I sense that being in New York, because I always worked in New York. Going to California, it came when I was doing like 150 television commercials. Mm-hmm. And, that was great, because of the money and everything. So I never had to do any kind of job other than this business ever. And, but, there are periods where you don't feel so successful. Other times you do. But in New York, in Follies and all those, probably, actually in applause, because this was a young kid from Ohio being in this Broadway show that, to me, being in it, rehearsals and everything, and doing the show was perfect from beginning to end for me. It's like I could almost write a book just about what it's like for a young person to go and be in a Broadway show. That was that for me. And I'll pick that I really felt grateful and successful being in a hit Broadway show. There's nothing like it. It's you can be in a lot of different Broadway shows and a lot of them don't go and whatnot. So many elements have to come together to make a thing work. But in that show, the minute I walked in rehearsal, and Ron Fields, who was a choreographer director, mm-hmm. took me to meet Betty Bacall, because I was doing a bit with her. And I remember the studio was like 6 steps up, and we went on, and she was sitting in the middle of the room with a stack of photographs of herself on her lap. All the producers, directors, everybody were sitting in front of her, and she was sitting there. Each one she'd go, no, 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 and they were all over the floor. And I was like, oh my God, I was, for a moment, I was kind of afraid of her, afraid to meet her. But when I did, she was delightful. She was wonderful. But
that show, first of all, it's one of my favorite scores. I love Applause, but it is such a product of its time. Do you think that it could ever be revived?
Probably not. I think it was a period. All you have to do is look at my costumes to see what period it was. I don't know where they ever got the idea to put me in these costumes, but scarves, endlessly, these scarves. I've never worn in my life that everything I did was a scarf or an orange jumpsuit up to the neck with another scarf on it. I was like, what the heck? But it was fun. It was such great fun.
Now, we know everything that you're great at. What are you bad at?
Bad at computers.
You're done very well with it.
My friend Greg sitting here, I'm like, we got a great big 85-inch television, because in Hawaii, what do you do at night? You usually watch television. There's really nowhere to go. And setting this thing up, I thought the reason they call them smart TVs, because they're 100 times smarter than we are. And even when he set up this computer for like an hour and a half or whatever, talking to the tech people and everything like that, they took him to play. Well, you got to go to this and go to this and go to this and mark that to have a picture on and do this. And even he, who's really good at this, said, how would anyone know to do this? I mean, it's I'm just like, Greg will do it. I don't understand. Televisions, all I want to do is turn the darn thing on, for God's sakes. But it's so technical. It's wonderful, but I don't understand the techniques. I'm really, really bad at that.
Wow. What are you good at besides these things that we already know about?
I'm good at living. I've all my life I've searched and studied and gone through things. I went through quite a few years where I learned how to create with my imagination and how really simple it was, but we make it so difficult. And through that, I began to understand that everything that we have, we've asked for, and good or bad or anything, but we ask for it, but we don't know we're asking for it. You know, especially things we focus on that it's best probably not to focus on. And then we see things happen. We wonder, why does God or whatever do this to me? I learned so much of that because while I was doing all these shows, I was sitting there reading books in between everything. Once, even in Follies, I forgot to come in with Graziella and Danielle, my partner, on stage.
Oh my God.
And I was upstairs, all those flights in the Winter Garden, and all of a sudden I heard my music because I was so engrossed in this book. I ran down those stairs, and we had this whole big entrance crossing and everything like that. And right when we stop and start to dance, I ran right out on stage, right into her arms. And she just looked at me and gave a little wink or whatever. Yeah, she would have done that entire number without me. She did not need me to partner her in that number. She was so self-sufficient, but I loved her dearly.
Talk about being in the moment. That was
wonderful.
You know, it's interesting that you say this. I went to see a show on Sunday afternoon, Suede, phenomenal entertainer. If you're not familiar with her, look her up. But she talked in the show about how those of us going through life, all of us, and we are doing one or two things, most people. We're either thinking, when I get that job, when I get that boyfriend, when I get that girlfriend, when I get that, when I get that, when I get that. Or we're thinking, when I get over this thing that I'm dealing with right now, my life will begin. Yeah. And this is it. And the fact that you say that you're good at living, God bless you. I think I am too.
I don't think people really realize how much they're living in the past or in the future and really not being here. I think that's why I've discovered it has nothing to do with religions or anything really. That's just the guise we use to learn these things. But essentially, it's being vertical, being present, and being conscious. And we're conscious if we're on a roller coaster, you're not thinking about anything else probably than going up and down these hills and screaming. You know, you're in the moment there, and you don't think about it. You can't think about being in the moment if you're in the moment. You know, but I'm big on that. Right where I'm at is exact. You know,
I agree. Amen. Yeah. And excluding drugs, of course, what is your antidepressant?
Looking at the ocean. We're on this 85-foot cliff with a lawn and downtown and out of ocean, and the ships pass by and everything like that. I realized how much I actually sit in my chair looking out the window while I'm writing, perfectly content, and sometimes I wonder, do you ever think, how do you ever get from there to there? I have no sense like I'm sitting in this room now. It's like nothing else exists except this room and you. And then I go to the store and I'm standing in the store and I'm thinking, it's almost like I didn't get here. I'm here. It's like you beamed in all over the place. I sort of think that way. I don't know. It's my particular way of looking at life, I guess.
Oh, well, I agree with you. Maybe you've just answered this question, but what is your particular point of view? And maybe you've just answered it.
I think I have, but maybe I can make it simpler. My point of view is simply life does not happen to us. It happens for us. Somebody said that one time, but I find it to be really true. I don't think we can go through life as a victim in life. And I don't look at things as good and bad. To me, it's really, there's no good and there is no bad. It's just the way it is, and I've spent my whole life exploring this. This has actually been the number one thing of my life, is understanding myself. not anybody else, because I don't blame people. Or
I
anything.
love you for saying that.
Yeah, it's I'm always like aware of what people sometimes say. Oh, do you sit and meditate? And I go, I'm meditating all the time. I'm always aware of what I'm doing, what I'm saying, this little voice that's going on in there, and beyond that. And to me, it's typical of my personality, exploring and never coming to an end. Just this leads to that, and that leads to this, and this leads to, and I walk in wonderment. Here in Hawaii, the stars, oh my God, it's like nothing I've ever seen, the stars. They even have low lights all over the city and everything to not interfere with the big observatory above us, all the observatories above us. And I just look at that. So I'm always posting pictures of the universe, because to me, it's like, that's me. You know, I'm looking at the inside of me, this whole thing, all of that's in here. And I think I don't think people, for the most part, really understand that. We're told for generations, thousands of years, this thing is inside of you, it's inside of you, and yet it's the last place anybody looks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sometimes I think, have you not heard?
I know.
Haven't you heard this before? You know, we've been told it over and over and over again. And yet still we search for it all out there, you know.
I'm totally on the same page with you. And again, you've answered, I think, the next question. What are your truths?
My truth is that I am the thing that everybody's searching for. I don't mean me, Michael, but that part of me, this consciousness, is playing the role of Michael. Playing the role of everybody, and it's all the same thing, same whatever, playing this role. And I laugh because I think we're playing our roles. I said, this is, you know, if you were in India or something like that, and you told somebody, you know, I just realized whatever all that is, it's this, and they would applaud and say, oh, great, you finally found out. Here, they act like you're crazy.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it never stopped me, because I don't care what anybody thinks about it or not. I'll say it if they want to. If they don't, it's like show business. There are people that never knew I was in show business. I never brought it up. I mean, like, you know, until they found out, and they'd say, were you in New York and stuff like that? I said, yeah. You know, but I kind of move on. I let a thing go, and I move to the next thing, and move to the next thing. And it's just the way I've always been, I guess.
It's funny, and maybe there is no answer to the next question, but what are your lies?
What are my lies? I think the lies are anything I tell myself and believe, especially if it's really not the truth. And I think that's being unveiled in life. People are seeing these things, and many people, I mean, we often believe because we want to. That's probably the primary thing. To be able to use that, which I have a feeling you talk about and do, to be able to believe something and produce it. We're really not creating anything. We're manifesting what's already there.
Absolutely.
If you realize it's already there, why wouldn't you be able to have it? But all these like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have enough money, or I can't do it. It has nothing to do with money. I can't get that across to anybody. It's not money, and it's not anything like that. And so I did it so many times, producing things in my life, that I realized that all I need to do is just simply go, oh, yeah, that'd be fun, and it's mine. I don't have to do the whole thing to do that anymore. But at this point where I'm beyond that business of even believing. You know, I understand the use of beliefs and how wonderful they can be, you know, especially when people are really trying to accomplish something. But I didn't really believe in show business. I don't think. Maybe I did. Maybe I thought I can do that somehow. But I was a really insecure kid. You know, my whole life. In fact, most of the people I know that are in show business and that are pretty insecure. You know, and I never thought.
I know are. Absolutely.
What?
I said most that I know are.
Yeah. And, you know, that's probably part of our talent.
You mentioned earlier, and this is one thing that I really admire about you, is the fact that you meeting, someone, opening a door for someone, or acknowledging the people that are doing their day-to-day jobs everywhere. And I really believe in random acts of kindness. I had the quote on the screen at the beginning of the show. And I'm sure that you practice random acts of kindness all the time.
I like to think I do. But it's kind of who I am, I think. And I don't consider, if this is why I've never asked for an autograph. I don't consider myself any less than anybody, and I don't consider myself any more than anybody. And it doesn't matter what they're doing, what their job is. It's this one thing doing it all. So why am I going to look at that and say, oh, I'm looking down on you because you work in a store? I just don't think that way.
Absolutely. And I feel the same way. That's why I say to people, when people say, oh my God, I met so-and-so, I says, well, they met you.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
And I always point that out to people. They have the opportunity of meeting you, and don't diminish yourself. Don't feel that you're any less than any other person that you've met. We all are on our paths, and because someone had the opportunity or the luck, whatever you want to call it, of having that spark of being known on a bigger level than some people, doesn't necessarily mean that that person is any more or any less important than you are.
I absolutely believe that.
And I feel the same way about every single person that I come in contact with.
Yeah, I do too. And I regardless of what they are and anything, I'm just glad to be alive. And I'm glad they're alive and that we're meeting and whatever, but it really helps in this business to think that way, actually. That people talk about being insecure, but I was sitting with a group of actors in New York once, and they were talking about being insecure, and they said, "Well, this is such an insecure profession." I said, "Well, didn't you realize that when you came into it?" And I sort of accepted the insecurity, and it was sort of a security in knowing it's insecure.
So we're going to give away the package tonight. I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on this. Thank you all for being here tonight. Don't go anywhere for just a moment, Michael. I've got one other last question that I want to ask you once we decide who we're going to give this to. Gary, do you know Gary? Gary Vest?
No, I don't think so.
So Gary, thank you for being here. Gary, my email address is richard@richardskipper.com. Once again, richard@richardskipper.com. Make sure that you contact me after the show so that I can get that to you. I've got one last question for you, Michael. Mm-hmm. And let me remove this. And that question is, what would you say to this little boy?
I'd probably say, don't be scared. Just follow your heart. You got everybody behind you. Your parents, everybody, and just live your life.
That's wonderful. This has been such a treat. I am so thrilled that we got past those technical issues at the beginning. Imagine if we'd gone through a whole show of that. We did it. So what's your neighbor's name again?
Greg Fleming.
Greg. Thank you, Greg. So I want to thank you, and thank you for being here. Don't go anywhere for a moment, because I'm going to give you the final word tonight. Okay. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This has been a real treat for me. And I'm a huge fan of Michael's work. I love his writing and the fact that he said yes. The word commitment, once again tonight, is something that we take with us each and every day in terms of every move that we make. Commit to be the best you that you can possibly be. That's all that matters. You're not responsible for what anyone else says or does. You're only responsible for how you respond to it. And we can all lift each other up and elevate each other. I've said this before, and it's worth saying again. When it comes to social media, Michael, of course, has talked about all the wonderful things that social media has. And I like to focus on those things as well. When you see a post, especially from other artists, because everyone wants to be acknowledged in this business, hit the like button, leave a comment, share it. If it's going to lift them up, if it's going to lift the others up that will see it, if it's going to even lift you up for doing that random act of kindness. If it's something that's negative or that's not going to build people up, hit the hide button, hit the delete button, because you're responsible for what you put out into the world. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. After the show, please go to the YouTube channel and leave a comment on this show about what you think of tonight's show. Share this with your friends and tell others about the show. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the 9th name that pops up and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know what they mean to you. Because as my dear friend Sean Moniger says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. So, Michael, I'm going to leave the screen and I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about tonight that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message you want to leave everyone with tonight. I want to thank you, first of all, for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you're going to continue to give to the world. Thank you for being here tonight. And it's all yours. Don't worry about how to end the show. When you say goodbye, the credits will roll. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I want you to know how much I really, really appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for being my friends on Facebook. Good night.